Let's get your latest business news now with Rupiwa Madzena. Hi again, Rupiwa. So, of course, I know you're going to tell us about the rand and how it's been impacted by Phala, but there's some potentially good news around Transnet. It seems like it's going for a bit of a do-over in trying to attract private investors.
And that's the clarity we'd like to get from them, in that it's been said that they're going back to the drawing board after the initial auctioning. So we do have Transnet to explain that to us. And the background here is that Transnet Freight Rail says it's not concerned really about the minimal interest from private businesses in the slots on the rail network. It says the 16 slots that were chosen for auction were part of a pilot project, and appetite will increase when the white paper on the slots has been finalized. Joining me now to explain what this means is Chief Commercial Officer Bonginkosi Mabaso. Thank you once again for joining us. I think there's a little bit of confusion from reports we've seen today around Transnet being set to go back to the drawing board when it comes to the auctioning of the slots. Maybe explain to us what that means and if that is actually the case.
Thank you, Rupiwa, and good evening to you and your listeners, your viewers rather. And thanks for the opportunity. So we are aware of the reports that have been put out there to the media that we are going back to the drawing boards. The reality is the success of the initiative that we've ran can only be measured against the objectives that we set in the beginning, which was to commence the conversation around private sector participation in rail operations. And our view is that it was a successful initiative in that we did land with operators. And most importantly, we were able to pick up learnings from the process that will then be effected and that will fine-tune the process as we implement now once the white paper has been enacted. So in essence, the notion that we've gone back to the drawing boards is in reality and not as an accuracy, in a sense that we have not restarted the process, but rather we are picking up from what we had initially set out, which is to pick up learnings and identify gaps. Some of the gaps that we've identified through the process, which of course require participation by government, private sector, and ourselves, is that as a country we need more leasing companies that will then play the ownership role of rolling stock, and that will make it available to prospective operators in the future.
Yeah. Now, in the press briefing that the chief executive had, he did indicate that you all as a team are trying to refine the model of the private participation between yourselves and private businesses. What does this refining look like? Are you going to be evaluating the criteria that you've already put out to market? Maybe just explain that to us.
Thank you, Rupiwa. So first of all, the process of refinement has always been what we've been gunning for from the onset. When we started this process as a pilot, the intention was to pick up learnings and therefore refine as we prepare for the enaction of the white paper. So in essence, when we say we'll be refining, we will be aligning this process with whatever the outcome of the white paper is. Keep in mind that none of us at this stage are aware of what the final enacted law will look like in relation to this, and therefore as we start, it was an initiative on our part to be proactive. We are shooting in the dark insofar as what the final requirements will be. Be that as it may, though, we have had an opportunity to allow private sector to also learn from this so that they prepare themselves accordingly. And therefore, what we are taking with us forward into the next process is, number one, an indication that we'll have a ready private sector at the time, and of course that we'll have a lot more availability of rolling stock in the private sector.
One of the other issues that's been highlighted, Bonginkosi, is that of leasing, and there not being sufficient leasing companies in South Africa. And given that this white paper you're working on models that of what's happened in Germany, that is an issue, and there have been calls for government to look at this. What would be almost an immediate solution to the leasing issues that exist currently?
The good thing, Rupiwa, is what you are bringing up has been a good guide for us as we implement this process. Remember, the Germans from whom we are learning in implementing this initiative were only able to run their first train after 7 years of the actual law being enacted on their part, which means It took 7 years of learnings from them. On the onset, when they started also, they didn't have as vast an option in terms of leasing companies that have rolling stock. It took them 7 years to build that muscle. What we are doing, therefore, as Transnet is we are starting ahead of time to start shaping up the private sector to get them ready so that when the time comes, they will be ready and they will have, of course, the rolling stock that is required. So we are learning from the German model. And from where we are and the steps that we've taken, it seems it will take us a lot less than the 7 years that it took them to actually implement it. And where they are now is not an indication of where they started. There were teething problems such as the ones that we are dealing with as well.
Very encouraging that you say it won't take 7 years. I don't think South Africa's economy can withstand any destruction or further destruction for another 7 years as we get that model right. But thank you very much for joining us and providing that clarity this evening. That is TFR's Chief Commercial Officer, Bonginkosi, providing clarity there, saying we haven't gone back to the drawing board. We are just refining the processes of creating the model for private companies to get on board. Here's a